everybody. Welcome to the No BS Zone. I'm Bernie Goldberg, for those of you who don't know, and I'm here with my friend, John Daly, also known as the Renaissance Man of the Rockies. How's it going today, John?
I'm doing good. And for people that are new to this podcast, that was a name that Bernie gave me. It wasn't one that I came up with myself. So I just wanted to clarify that, but I like it quite a bit.
Well, there's a reason I came up with that, because you are the Renaissance Man of the Rockies. John and I often talk about Donald Trump. After all, he's the president of the United States. He says and does things that are newsworthy. Sometimes we praise him, as in the case of when he shut down the southern border. That was a very important plus for Donald Trump himself. I even approved of the war in theory, if not the way he went about it. He should have informed the American people right up front why he was doing it. He should have informed Congress. He should have involved his allies. But we've said good things about him. And we've said bad things about him because we give our honest opinions. That's all we do here. But today I want to start out with a few words about the Democrats. Last Monday, as far as a lot of liberal and progressive Democrats are concerned, Donald Trump was a war criminal. He was a war criminal because he said he was going to destroy the Iranian civilization and bomb them back to the Stone Age. Now, if he actually had done that, he would be a war criminal, but he only said it. And simply for saying it, according to at least one person I saw on CNN, that made him a war criminal. Yes, just saying it made him a war criminal. Okay, that was on Monday. Whatever you think of that, on Monday, a lot of Democrats said he was a war criminal. On Tuesday, one day later, he didn't bomb them into oblivion because there was, he said, negotiations that were underway, and he wanted to give them a chance to come to the table and make a deal. Okay, what did that mean as far as the same Democrats who had called him a homicidal maniac and a war criminal on Monday? On Tuesday, he was Taco Tuesday. Taco, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure many of you do, is Trump always chickens out. TACO, Taco. So let's review. On Monday, Donald Trump was a war criminal, a maniac, a warmonger, a bunch of other words just like that. On Tuesday, he was a wuss. As Joe Biden might say, come on, man. Come on. How are we supposed to take you Democrats seriously when you call him a war criminal one day and the very next day you call him a coward for not bombing them into oblivion? If everything is political, fine. Let's get that out on the table. Because what this comes down to is no matter what Donald Trump does, and we have criticized him for things we think he's done wrong. But for whatever he does, if Democrats are going to say he's wrong, no matter what he does, then you're not serious people. And I'm not going to take you seriously. I'd like to hear what John says, but I no longer can take Democrats seriously if they're going to criticize everything he does.
Well, I should start out by saying, Bernie, that I've never liked the whole taco thing because when Trump does move forward on something or pulls back on something, that's usually a much better situation than what he was previously threatening to do. So I'm actually glad he doesn't follow through with it, and I think it's usually the right course of action. We've seen this on all kinds of things, of course, including the very highest tariff rates back on Liberation Day, the threats to invade Greenland, and now the suggestion that he was going to nuke Iran. So I've never felt inclined to taunt him over those things, and that's really what the Democrats are doing. This is with the taco stuff. They're just doing it to get under Trump's skin. But I think it should be emphasized too, and I'm guessing you probably agree with this, Bernie, that Trump sets himself up for this stuff as well. No one's forcing him to go out there in front of the entire world and say crazy things. That's a choice he's making. This is a threat like that to Iran. Back in with previous presidents, I could see stuff like that happening behind the scenes, on direct phone calls, that sort of thing, not blasted out there on social media. So So when the president of the United States says crazy things and in front of the entire world, I think it's fair game to take what he says seriously, even if it's Donald Trump, because he does hold a very serious office. And I think lots of times, perhaps in the moment as he's posting these things, because they seem pretty sporadic, he might be serious in his mind, at least conceptually, before reality either sinks in shortly after that, or somehow it's thrust upon him. I'm curious what you think about that.
But if you're going to criticize him for saying stupid things, like I'm going to bomb Iran, back to the Stone Ages, I'm going to wipe out their civilization. I don't support a president of the United States saying stuff like that. We're going to talk more about that later, but I don't support that.
Right.
But the Democrats are the ones who are calling him a wuss for not doing that just one day later. That's on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is just, like I said, just to get under his skin.
There's plenty we could criticize Donald Trump for. And before this No BS zone is over today, we will. But that's on Democrats. That's totally on Democrats. That tells me that no matter what he does, they're going to find a reason to be against it. They're not serious, and they can't be taken seriously. Okay, as I said earlier, as Joe Biden might say, come on, man, come on. There's something else going on. Democrats are all over television. I don't know if you still watch television, John, but
video clips, not actual television news.
I get depressed watching cable TV. I really do.
Yeah.
But Democrats are all over cable TV saying Donald Trump should be impeached. They want him removed from office. That's wishful thinking. That's not going to happen. The 25th Amendment is not something Democrats have any control over. It's something Republicans would have to do, and they're not going to do it. But I think he will be impeached if, and most likely when, Democrats take control of the House in the midterm elections. So let's talk about the implications of that. First, does Donald Trump even care if Democrats take over the House? John has spoken out on this before, and I want him to weigh in again on this in a minute. But I'm wondering, when he's a lame duck, will he become even more erratic than he already is? Will he use executive power to do things that he can't do legislatively? He can't do anything legislatively even now because we're so divided in our politics. With his political power diminished even more, he may try to invent ways to maintain some political clout. Will he not just threaten to leave NATO, for instance? He's been threatening that for a while. Will he leave NATO? He's always wanted Greenland, but of course he can't take Greenland. Well, I say, of course, what if he sends the military to Greenland? Now, I'm not saying he's going to do these things, but I am saying that if Donald Trump is impeached, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, maybe you do, John, but I don't. But in a dangerous world, this is important. In a dangerous world, the unknown makes it even more dangerous. And we're going to enter an unknown world when the Democrats, I'm going to say when the Democrats take over, because I can't see a way that the Republicans are going to hold on to the House. But if or when the Democrats take over, Donald Trump is going to be impeached. Because if the mainstream Democrats don't want to, the progressives who have the energy and the voice in the Democratic Party, they're going to make a big stink over this, and they're going to force the rest of the Democrats to impeach Donald Trump. First of all, my first question to you, John, is do you agree that Donald Trump will be impeached, or do you think I'm going too far on that?
No, I think he definitely will, and I think you got the second part of that correct as well. So the Democrats, I think, are very clearly going to take over the House. Just that's how the numbers are stacked. And that's all it takes is a majority of members of Congress to impeach the president. And then, but in order to convict him, that would require the Senate to have a sort of a supermajority, and that's not going to happen. So I think he will be impeached. just a reminder to everybody too, I'm sure most people know this, but impeachment is a political process. It's not a criminal one. So the person being impeached doesn't have to have broken the law. It just requires, again, a majority of House representatives to believe that person has, or at least make a case for how that person has abused their power in a significant way. So impeachment is something that's is very much on the table. I think they'll do it, the Democrats, I think in large part because I think it'll make some of their base happy. I don't think it'll really move the needle much on the general electorate, because I think most of America now, I mean, the polls back this up, are not happy with Donald Trump. I don't think they'll care too much if he has to deal with an impeachment, which there's not a lot he has to do with that anyway. That's mainly.
But John, you think he doesn't care if Republicans lose control of the House or not?
Yeah, no, and I thought that last time he was president too. I've never seen, and I bring this up, I brought this up a number of times. I've never seen much evidence that Trump really cares about Congress at all. And in his second term, he's doing so many things through executive action. The Supreme Court is now rolling back some of this, but
I don't think he cares about his own party either.
Oh no. No, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. I mean, that's not breaking news. We've known this for a decade now, and he's always he has cost people forget this, but by the end of his first term, he had lost the presidency, the Senate twice for Republicans, the House of Representatives. I don't think he ever cared. I mean, we know how after he lost the 2020 election, he basically cost the Republicans in Georgia who are running for Senate the runoff election, because he basically told people not to participate in this corrupt system. And so Republicans, enough of them stayed home that the Democrats ended up picking up these 2 Senate seats. So
do you think though, John, that we will be entering a more dangerous time if Donald Trump is stripped of Congress, whatever support they had for him, if he's out there all by himself as a lame duck?
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced about that. I mean, I think a lot of what Trump's been able to get away with in this first part of his second term was because, there was Republicans in Congress who could have stood up and done something. I mean, Congress could have shut down these tariffs right at the beginning too, and they chose not to. So I think that allowed him to do these executive actions that have been damaging to the economy. The Supreme Court was able to roll back some of this stuff, and there's Trump still finding ways to try and impose this particular policy. But I don't think I felt that was pretty dangerous for America. I mean, there's other examples, but I don't think it could get worse than it has been. At least the abuses of power in the second term, and maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't want to jinx it. But I don't think, I would imagine he won't be as erratic as far as what he's imposing as president. I mean, maybe the rhetoric will get more erratic. I think part of him actually likes having the Democrats with a little bit of power, so he can blame things on them and go after them for screwing up his agenda, that sort of thing. He can't do that right now because the Republicans have been in the House and the Senate. So I can see the rhetoric getting worse. I'm not sure the actions are going to get worse.
Well, and Republicans who, at least those who are in swing districts, and I think a lot more than just those who are in swing districts, they're going to have to disassociate themselves from the president in some way or another, because if when they're asked, what do you think of the war? What do you think of inflation? What do you think of grocery prices? He said he was going to reduce prices on day one, which was something he should have never said. They can't defend all of that. They cannot defend Donald Trump in essence. And I'm wondering what it's going to look like when they stop defending Donald Trump, or when they start walking a tightrope where they defend him to some degree, but not entirely, not the way they would if they were in a totally safe MAGA district. I wonder what that's going to look like, because anytime somebody's on a tightrope, one wrong step and you're going to die. So Republicans up for re-election don't want to die, and I'm wondering what that's going to look like.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I've seen some analysis where people speculate after the party primaries for these midterms are effectively over. Because right now Republicans are scared to death to get on Trump's wrong side. You have a handful of exceptions, but really not many, because they know that Trump can sink their primary hopes very easily just by coming out and saying vote for the other person in this primary, and then their political career is over. So there's very few people that are doing it right now. I think once the primaries are over, you will see some backtracking. I don't expect to see Republicans really laying the hammer to Donald Trump after cozying up to him in the primaries, but I think you will see some people trying to distance themselves on some of the more unpopular policies. Probably do so in a very polite way that doesn't get on President Trump's radar too closely. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we've seen, like, so far, the people that have been working to distance themselves from Trump have been sort of the wingnut people like Tom Massey, not more traditional Republicans. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, the mandatory disclaimer is that November is a long way off. Anything can happen. A lot of things will happen. But I think the horses escaped from the barn already. I just do not see how this is going to be good for Republicans in November. And as always, I could be wrong.
Do you? I'm curious, Bernie. Do you think I know you don't like making predictions, but do you think you have an idea of when we both agree the Democrats will try to impeach Trump? Do you think what do you think their basis will be? Because I doubt that they'll just say all the above. No, I think they'll have to focus on one thing in particular, maybe two things.
Let me get to that in a second. We have a lot of new people watching us. Let me say why I don't make predictions. I did in 2016, either late 2015 or early 2016. I looked into the crystal ball, which I have, and I said, it told me Donald Trump will not run for president. And if by some insane chance he does run, he won't win. I don't make predictions anymore. The crystal ball is cracked and it's gathering dust in the attic. No predictions. I do think when I say I think he's going to be impeached, that's hardly a prediction. I mean, that's looking at the facts and coming to a logical conclusion. On what basis do I think they will impeach him? Anything they want. Anything they want. It doesn't even have to be a legitimate reason, because, as you said, it's a political entity, not a legal entity. They will find either he waged a war without Congress's approval, which is not an impeachable offense, but they'll make it one. He's stealing money and filtering it to his family. If they have proof of that, fine. They'll come up with a half dozen possibilities and settle on one or two. But one way or the other, and forgive me for stating the obvious, it's going to go nowhere. The Republicans, if they still control the Senate, which is a very important if they control the Senate, they won't even bring it up for discussion. So the charges won't be televised all over the country and all over the world. If the Democrats take control of the Senate, that's another story. Then they will bring it up, and then it will be ugly for Donald Trump and his party on national television for at least weeks on end, which is another reason the midterms are really important. The House is gone, I believe. Again, not a prediction, just an analysis. I'm making a distinction between the two. The Senate is up for grabs. The Senate was safe a while back. I don't think it's safe anymore. Final thought before we move on?
No, we can move on to the next one.
Okay. I'm not a Christian, so John, you straighten me out if I have some of this wrong.
Okay.
On Good Friday, the most solemn day in the Christian calendar, Donald Trump took the Truth Social And he said, our military, the greatest and most powerful by far in the world, hasn't even started destroying what's left in Iran. Bridges next, then electric power plants. Okay. If he really meant that, and by the way, these tweets, these posts they're not even meant for us. They're meant for the regime in Iran. But even if he meant that, even if he didn't mean that and was threatening, that's on Good Friday, for God's sake. For God's sake, that's a nice touch. That's on Good Friday, the most solemn day in the Christian calendar. He's threatening to bomb bridges and electric power plants. Okay. Then on Easter Sunday, and I'm going to clean it up. I thought long and hard about whether I should clean it up or not. I'm going to clean it up, but I really shouldn't. I should say it the way Donald Trump wrote it. Bear with me. He said, he took to Truth Social and said, open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. And then he ended with, praise be to Allah. If that's not crazy, I don't know what is. But on Easter Sunday, he said, open the effing straight. And he didn't say effing straight. Let's make sure everybody understands that. He said the whole word. On Easter Sunday, for a president of the United States to publicly say something that's beyond stupid. Full disclosure, I speak bad language fluently, but not in public, not to strangers. And oh yeah, I'm not the president of the United States of America. He is. I want to just read you something before I go to you, John, that Peggy Noonan said in the Wall Street Journal regarding the post about, not even the post about the open the effing straits, the post about destroying Iran's civilization, bombing their bridges, bombing their power plants, which would put them in darkness. Think about that. Bomb their power plants, the whole country would be in darkness for God knows how long. Okay, Peggy Noonan writes, the posts were in showbiz. They were sinister. You destabilize the world when, as an American, as the president of the United States, you say such things. You rob your own nation of a claim to moral seriousness in the military action in which it's engaged. You are saying, we're not trying to protect life, but plan to attack, and in the attack, kill non-combatants who are members of the targeted civilization. The moral high ground is relinquished. Just one short addition. It bolsters the position of your enemies. Their animus is justified. Their commitment is deepened. It allows them to pretend they're fighting for the continuation of their people and not only for the continuation of their regime. I think those are wise words by my former CBS News colleague, Peggy Noonan. Donald Trump, does he think these things through? Does he care? I think does he care is a question we could ask about almost everything he does. But I mean, as bad as this is, what does he do next? He posts a picture of himself. And again, I'm not a Christian, but this offends me. He posts a picture of himself as Jesus Christ. But in Donald Trump's defense, he said, no. It showed me as a doctor. If you believe that, you're crazy. Yes, I'm talking to anybody who believes that Donald Trump meant that he was, I was just showing myself as a doctor. If you believe that, you're as crazy as he is. John, you're a Christian, a practicing Christian, as I understand it. What do you make of this?
Yeah, no, it's funny because we originally planned to talk in this segment just about Trump's Easter Sunday post on Truth Social, but then he worked harder the following Sunday. He posted this picture of himself depicted as Jesus healing the sick. So it's possible, Bernie, that this is going to be like a Sunday tradition. You know, Trump finding new ways to offend the faithful, mock the Christian faith, count on his. And what's funny because whenever this happens, he then counts on his high-profile Christian supporters to explain what he really meant. This time, as you said, he offered the excuse that he thought the picture depicted him as a doctor, Bernie, which I'm not sure. I would not have predicted that he would have used that excuse, mainly because when I go to the doctor, they usually don't come into the room wearing these flowing white robes and have light shining from the palms of their hands. So that one caught me off guard.
Really?
What's that?
Your doctor doesn't come into the room with his left hand glowing?
No, and there's not people down by his knees praying either when he comes in. So, but I will say, as a Christian myself, more broadly speaking, the Trump stuff, there's lots of examples. I mean, people act whenever he does something like this. A lot of his, even his supporters on the Christian right, they act all surprised. I can't believe Trump. But there's been all kinds of examples. I mean, whether it's the upside down Bible or the autographed Trump Bibles or the Trump of Jesus stuff. This isn't the first time we've seen stuff like this.
But it's more than there are more than religious implications of this. I'll leave the religious implications. I won't go beyond what I said. I'll leave it to the Christian people who are listening to us and the Christian people in the United States, that they can take it any way they want. But there are political implications to this.
Right.
The question is he going to lose Christian support? Is he going to lose support among Christians for this? Now, he's already somewhat shattered his MAGA base by going to war after he said no more wars and all that. Is this another strong supporting group, Christian right? Are they going to be so offended by this, if they're offended at all, that he's going to lose support among them?
No, he won't, and he hasn't really lost support. And so you brought up another good point with he ran on being the peace president. No more Middle Eastern wars, all that stuff. He actually went after Nikki Haley as sort of this bloodthirsty warmonger who wanted to do this very evil deed of dropping a bomb on Iran, which Trump ended up doing once he was president. So, and then you look at the polls. You had all of these MAGA adjacent podcasters. You have Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, all these people who sort of deviated from Trump. When he went to war, they pointed out, well, this is not what you ran on. I mean, they've got all kinds of other problems, but I think they thought a lot of the MAGA base at that point would kind of side with them. And then you look at the polls, and everybody, I think the biggest supporters of the war in Iran are MAGA Republicans. So much of this is just they'll do whatever Trump wants.
That's factually correct, John. That's an interesting point.
Yeah. And so there really hasn't been this disintegration of MAGA. I mean, Trump is MAGA. So if he came out tomorrow, shut down all his tariffs, became the free trade president, the same people that are with him now would stay with him. He'd probably pick up some more people. So
and this leads into my final thought, something I mentioned to you just before we started this session, and it's something I'm thinking of writing about at some point. There are a lot of decent people out there, including in the MAGA group. They're MAGA people, they love Donald Trump, and they're good people. They're decent people, many of them. Not all of them, but many of them. They really don't like saying open the epping straits. They don't like saying Rob Reiner was stabbed to death because he didn't like Donald Trump. They don't like that kind of stuff. But they stay with him for one reason. And I've spoken to MAGA people, bright people, really bright people. But they're MAGA people because they really, really despise the other side. And that takes care of everything as far as they're concerned. Donald Trump can get away with, I'm going to say just about anything, but I'm not sure I need to say the just about part. Donald Trump can get away with anything because he's better, in their view, than Kamala Harris, than Joe Biden, Barack Obama. They loathe that side so much that they'll excuse anything he does. I don't think that's a good thing, but I get it. I don't agree with it, certainly, if I even have to say that, but that's their position.
Yeah, and I understand that position more when it comes to elections. But, Donald Trump won in 2024, so there's not going to be a Democrat in office, at least for another few years yet. So that's why I've always been sort of down on that stuff, because you and I, Bernie, we are not fans. We were of the Democrats. We were not fans of Kamala Harris. We were not fans of Joe Biden.
Please say that again.
Yeah.
Emphasize. We have a lot of newcomers,
Right.
and I don't want them thinking that we're one note samba against Donald Trump.
Right,
Please.
right. We don't vote for. We haven't been voting for the Democrats. We haven't been saying there's very little that you and I have in common with them, policy wise,
Right.
rhetorically wise. So but to me, the election was over in 2024. Donald Trump is our president. It's okay to criticize him. It's okay to say this is wrong. He shouldn't be doing this, because sometimes he actually does listen and he changes his behavior accordingly. But it's I don't understand this continued devotion to politicians. It wasn't like, I remember when I first got into politics seriously, George W. Bush was president, and there wasn't this belief just on the right to agree with every single thing he said. For example, when he nominated Harriet Miers for the Supreme Court, conservatives said, "Oh, this is not a good pick." They spoke up, and he ended up changing it. So it was okay to criticize something that a president from your party did. It doesn't give ammunition to the other side. It's just making your voice heard. The president works for you. It's patriotic to speak out in dissent of something you don't like.
Let me say this to the MAGA people, and mostly to people in media, people who do opinion shows on Fox, who are independent journalists who really don't criticize Donald Trump. All you're doing is helping the Democrats. When you don't hold him accountable, when you don't encourage him to change course, when by your silence or your agreement with some of the crazy things he says and does, you're only helping Democrats, because the people who count the most in elections are independents. They're the biggest bloc. Democrats and Republicans have 27% of the population each, and independents have over 45%. All you do is encourage them to vote for the Democrat. So your silence or your agreement with him, you're making excuses for him, you're not doing him any favors.
Yeah, no, and I think you can point that to direct policies too. And I hit on this earlier, but what Trump's ratings are very low. What do you think is the primary reason they're that low, Bernie?
I think, well, first of all, if you break it down into categories, they're not very low among Republicans.
Right.
They're very low. They're near zero among Democrats. All predictable. It's the independents that bring his overall numbers underwater. Right. The independents, they're moderate people, and Donald Trump is not a moderate president, and his words offend moderate people. Open the effing straits on Easter Sunday offends moderate, reasonable people, and they fit into the independent category. So, John, I think the answer to your question is he's lost independence. And when you lose independence by big numbers, you lose elections.
Right. And that's that's correct. I guess what I was trying to get at is what specifically Trump has been doing that has gotten independence.
I'd like to answer that, but every day it's something new.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have said when he said Rob Reiner was stabbed to death because he had Trump derangement syndrome. And that's literally what he said, by the way. I'm not making anything up for those who don't follow this closely. I thought that's the end. Right. Oh, no, because when Robert Mueller died, the special prosecutor, he said, I'm glad Robert Mueller is dead. Well, you could have said that privately. You could have thought that, but he said it out loud. I thought that was it. What did he do when he said, open up the effing straits? And he said it on Easter Sunday, the most joyous day on the Christian calendar. I figured, well, he can't do that. No, John, I can't answer your question because tomorrow it's going to be something else.
Well, what I was getting at is I think all these things you're saying are adding to the problem. But so back in 2024, I think Trump largely won because people were sick of high prices, and Trump was promising to bring those prices down. And then once he got into office, he put into effect policies that would only keep those prices up. And I think that's what started all of this. And going to your point about this helping the Democrats, for people that like me were saying at the time, these tariffs are a really bad idea. They're going to make everything high. That wasn't to help the Democrats out. That was to hopefully shape policy under this Republican administration to get away from what was clearly going to hurt the economy and raise prices and all of this stuff. So that, I guess my point was just that criticizing Donald Trump isn't a political weapon for the other side. It's hopefully trying to shift the policy in a correct direction, or shift the conduct in a better, healthier direction. But that was sort of my point there.
And to the extent that James Carville was right, that it's the economy, stupid. Yeah. To the extent that that's true, and it's true all the time. If somehow inflation comes down, if prices come down, and I'm not sure that's going to happen at all, but if that happens, sure, that'll help. That'll help Republicans in the midterms. But a lot has already happened that has just offended those independents that decide elections. And I think, again, this is analysis, not a prediction. If I were making a prediction, I'd say nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen in November. But November's a long way off. But unless a few miracles happen, and Donald Trump isn't going to, God isn't going to grant Donald Trump any miracles after what Donald Trump said about God, open up the effing straits on Easter Sunday. I think it's going to be a bleak November for Republicans. On that note, on that happy note, and I don't mean that literally. I'm not crazy about Democrats taking control of the House, and God forbid the House and the Senate. On that note, let's call it a day, and thank all our newcomers. By the way, one last thing for newcomers. What I found in my writing, not just my writing, let me make this a broader point. What I find out there is people don't like to read and listen to people they disagree with. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. You have to listen to people you disagree with, because your mind may be changed. And when you speak back to us, in this case, in posts under our columns, you may change my mind. You may change John's mind. So it's okay to listen to people you disagree with. It's not only okay, it's important. All right, on that note, adios, everybody. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Bernie Goldberg with the Renaissance Man of the Rockies, John Daly. Bye-bye.